Welcome to the Working in Real Estate webinar. I'm your host, Carly Barnett. Join me as we dive into the dynamic realm of talent acquisition and uncover insights that will reshape your approach to both working in real estate and recruiting to build your business. Get ready to be informed, inspired, and empowered. Recruiting Consult acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters that this webinar is recorded on. Welcome to episode 10 of the Working in Real Estate webinar. Today I'm joined by Vivek Tailor, who is a director at Richard Matthews. And Vivek, tell us a little bit about you before we get into our chat today.
Thanks, Carly. Thanks for having me. So been in the industry roughly for around about 10 years now. Started off doing numerous roles. Most of them were associate roles until pretty much the last, I think, 5 to 6 years, where I've been with Richard Matthews Real Estate and started off again as an associate, transitioned into freestanding agent, then grew a team, and now,
Now
a
here,
director.
So obviously starting your real estate career, why real estate? What was the interest for you to pursue a career in the real estate industry?
I think from a very, very young age, I was always fascinated by it. I grew up in India, so obviously in India, I saw a lot of apartments and all of that being built around me, and that was, I think, more of a fascination of how things were built. And then we moved to New Zealand, where I was very involved with my dad, buying and renting and selling properties. And straight out of high school, I knew I wanted to do that, but my dad's like, "Nah, go get a degree first." So I got the degree just so I have it. And then, got straight into real estate. I think it's just a fascination. It started off being, really interesting to see people, how they sold real estate, how they talked to buyers. It was just interesting to me. And I did it for 6 months straight out of university in Auckland, New Zealand. And I loved it. And since day one in Sydney, I've been doing that. So no regrets.
So I guess with that first role in real estate, what were you doing and did it meet your expectations, or were you thinking this is a lot different to going through open homes with dad and, going through that rental process with my family?
Yeah, I think the first 6 months in New Zealand, I didn't really take it too seriously because I knew I was about to move. So it was just like,
Yeah.
have a bit of fun. But I think the serious part of it was when we moved to Sydney. I think it's very, very tough. Like the first 6 months in my first role, I think I only worked there for 6 months. Then I was let go. And then I went into like a really fast paced environment. And that was really cool. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of bar work because we were doing over 100 hours a year, I think it was, between me and a director and an EA. Um, was it what I expected? Probably to a certain degree because I didn't really have much of an expectation. I knew what I had to do, which is pretty much be a salesperson and sell property. But it was just extremely fast paced. Like it was a lot of open homes, there was a lot of calls, and just doing the bare basic, that you do when you get into real estate, I guess.
Yeah. Because obviously I met you back then when you moved to Sydney and you were looking to get into real estate, and that role that you'd gone into, your first role in real estate, you were under an agent that did bigger properties but less
Yeah,
volume. They're on
yeah,
more of a wind down with their career.
yeah,
So obviously it's not the pace. That would have been very different to where that second role is, where you landed, where you've got a director that's still very hungry to do
yeah,
deals. It's got a
yeah,
very solid reputation. They do a lot more volume.
yeah.
What was that shift like? Did that help you feel more excited about real estate, being in that environment that was pacey?
Yeah, I mean, look, I didn't really know what I was getting into. Like literally, I landed in Sydney and I had like 10 interviews lined up. You did most of them for me. So, I took a role because of the brand. I was like, oh, I love this brand. I want to work for them.
Yeah.
But I did acreage properties. It was slow pace. It took like 200 days to sell one house. And pretty much what I learned though was in the first 6 months, all I was doing was cold calling, collecting data for my director, and I was doing all of the stuff that you would do to be a good agent anyway. So it was good as a learning experience. But in terms of making deals, putting soul stickers up or getting new listings, it was very slow paced. The second role was where I learned pretty much the buyer side of things. So, just calling people back, doing the bare basics again, doing a lot of bar work, negotiating deals, taking people to auction, going through the auction process. A lot more fun because there's always a lot more happening, and it's a lot easier to learn when you have listings that you're working under or few listings that you're working under, because you're exposed to more buyers, you're exposed to more vendors, you're exposed to a little bit more, I guess, out there in the marketplace.
Yeah. And I mean, what you said around collecting data, building out the database, it is right. Like when you're starting out in real estate and doing that can feel quite monotonous and like it's not really going anywhere. It's not really real estate selling, getting
Yeah,
out the properties and things. But you're right, it is important because you've got to do that if you're a standalone agent
yeah,
selling big, little, small homes, acreage, beachfront apartment, no matter what it is. You have to learn to do that and build that foundation. I think a lot of people that come into the industry don't realize that how important those prospecting and data building skills and tasks are.
yeah. I think a lot of people jump the gun. They go, "Oh, where's the listing? Where's the listing?" Well, hold on. Who do you call if you don't have the data in the first place?
Mm,
It's the agent's responsibility to get data in one area, even if it's a very small place that you're targeting. Like for example, when I started at Richard Matthews, I did associate for about 6 months, and
mm,
then made a decision that I want to go out on my own. And obviously, we had presence in some suburbs, but there were a lot of suburbs that were still untapped. So
mm,
I started, in terms of collection of data, I started with only a block of 75 townhouses, right? Like it was literally one sale that we made, and off the back of it, I just knew every single person in that complex. And we still sell properties in that complex from the work I did around 5 years ago. Like we've sold, I think, out of 75, we've probably done 25 transactions in that complex in the last 5 years. That's just
wow.
one complex.
Yeah.
But every time you sell something in there, you kind of then as the sales volume kind of increase, you kind of expand your farm area. So it
Mm,
started off at 75, then it went into all the townhouses within that one suburb. From there, it went into the whole suburb, and then we started listing houses, and then it went into two suburbs. So then it was Strathfield South was the primary suburb, where we've been number one for like 4 years in a row, and then we branched into Belfield, which is the suburb next to it, and we do extremely well in both of those markets now. So, but yeah, the first step was getting to know everyone who lives in that complex, getting all
mm,
their names, getting all their numbers, and it's pretty simple stuff. Literally go on RP data and call the people. Some people door knock. I'm not a door knocker. Majority
mm,
of my work in prospecting is on the phones, cold calling,
mm.
but it works, and it works really well.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's important to remember. You do have to do what works for you or that works for your core area because, like, in your role with the acreages, it's not possible to door knock
Yeah,
acreages. It would take all day just to get to
yeah,
2 or 3 properties.
yeah,
And sometimes, with those townhouses or units, it can be gated off and hard to get into, so you can't have
yeah.
conversations. So, yeah, knowing your market and knowing how to prospect to cut through is really important just because door knocking or letterbox dropping works really well for one agent, it doesn't mean it's going to work well for the other.
Yeah, I think, look, some people in our office do door knock, and they're very, very good at it. And that's fine. You got to work with what you got. But I'm not a
Mm,
good door knock. I wouldn't have a clue. If I knocked on someone's door, I would be quite horrible at it. But if you gave
yeah.
me a phone and a list, I'd be very good. Like I could make connections. I could get appraisals, and identify people who would sell in the next 12 months, and then really, really focus in and pound them, I guess.
So your focus when you're making those calls isn't for the quick win now, by the sounds of it. It's thinking about where could this relationship be in a few months' time? Where could this relationship be in the future?
Yeah.
Not getting disgruntled because the 20 calls you've made hasn't yielded a listing on the spot. Because
Yeah.
people think
It's
that's how it works, and it's not that
yeah.
easy.
Yeah, like it's interesting because we're now obviously trying to get into new markets, and
Mm,
we've got new staff members that have just started, and pretty much, yeah, our role now is to collect data in their own
mm,
patches. So everyone's got a suburb. All we're doing at the moment is going through a process of getting people that live in that suburb into our database. Once they're there, it's about follow up. And, look, we'll find people now as well when we're calling this saying, yeah, look, I'm selling. Some have maybe sold last week. Some have maybe already signed with another agent. And that's all going to
mm,
be part of part of the process. But there are people, just from what we've done so far in the last kind of month or so, that we've identified that are selling in the next 12 months. So they're in the database, but we also have probably 600, 700 people in our core area now in our database that we never had before. So when we do
Yeah.
get the listing, at least we have people to call and say, hey, look, we just sold one in your street or in your around the corner from you, and the data is already there. It's the
Yeah.
hardest part. Like, getting data into your database is honestly the hardest part, because it
Yeah.
doesn't give you any reward in the short run.
Mm.
But once it's there, it's will make your life so much easier.
Yeah. Have you found like calls that you maybe did initially now like come back to you? Like you've built that goodwill and there's less sort of
Yeah,
cold conversations, it's warmer, you know
yeah.
more about their family and they're just reaching out. It makes that prospecting a lot easier.
Yeah, so like, I know a lot of people are big on appraisals, right? Like, I
Yeah.
just find it really hard to book in an appraisal off a cold call, or almost
Mm.
impossible.
Yeah.
Lucas books in like 10 appraisals a week off cold calling. So
Yeah.
it's a bit different. Like, he works differently to the way I do it. But what I will do is I'll identify a lead, and then I'll build a relationship before I even get in front of them. So by the time I'm in
Mm.
front of them, it's not like, well, it's still cold. By that time, they know
Mm.
who I am. They've seen my track record. I know kind of what they're trying to achieve. And by the time I actually do the initial appraisal, I've already got a pretty good rapport with that client. So it depends. Like, sometimes, yeah, you'll get the quick appraisal and you go in, you book in the appraisal, you go in straight away. But sometimes, even if you just identify, hey, look, they are going to be selling, stay
Mm.
close to them. So by the time you actually go and see them, you've already got some kind of rapport. It's very hard to cold call and just book in appraisals. It's pretty tough.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, like, doing that associate role with Richard Matthews, you kind of hit a point where you thought, is real estate for me? Like, you lost a little bit of your love for the industry, which is hard
Yeah.
to believe. But, like, talk about, like, what was that like? And how did you turn yourself around from, I don't know if I love real estate anymore, to reigniting your interest and your passion in it?
Yeah. So I was doing real estate for almost 5 years before coming to Richard Matthews Real Estate. There was a lot of stop and start. We had
Mm.
personal challenges and all that kind of stuff. So we did all of that. Once I started Richard Matthews, I was back into an assistant role. And to be honest with you, I did that for 6 months. Then we really wanted to go to the next level, in the sense that I didn't want to do the same thing I was doing for the last 5 years again at a newer place. Right. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna have a crack. I went out there on my own. And yeah, I did what I'm supposed to do, which is collecting data, doing all that crap. But for the
Mm.
first 12 months, it was extremely hard.
Mm.
I wasn't getting enough listings. I was making very little money. And that's when I pulled my directors aside and said, hey, look, I don't know if this is for me. I'm going to leave. Um,
Mm.
Luckily, they were able to convince me to stay. And yeah, since then, I think what happens is, uh, over time you lose patience, right? When you keep doing the same
Mm.
thing over and over and over again, and you're not getting the reward, you're going to be like, oh shit, is it really for me? But
Mm.
I did a lot of work. I did like 7 days a week for months and months and months and months, and I was getting a little bit of success here and there, but I wasn't consistent. So I kind of got to a state, I'm like, shit, like, it's really hard. It's almost too hard. But yeah, look, the directors kind of said to me, look, hang in there. You're on the right path. It's just a matter of time before you get the momentum.
Mm.
And yeah, luckily in my year two as a standalone agent, I got that. So
Yeah.
and since then, it's, yeah, like, second year of real estate. I think as a standalone agent, I had Jesse, who started with me, and towards the end of that
Mm.
financial year, I also recruited Regina. So we had a team of three. So yeah, it
Mm.
went from being very, very slow to kind of, it picked up, and it picked up really quickly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you, I guess in that time, you went to AREC. We've just had AREC in
Yeah,
last couple of weeks. So
yeah.
obviously the Australian Real Estate Convention. What happened at AREC there? Because a lot of people go, they listen, they get revved up, they take lots of notes, but nothing
Yeah.
else happens from there. But what happened for you at that AREC that you went to?
Yeah, I was listening to Tom Hector, I think, an agent in Adelaide,
Yeah.
an extremely good agent. He was talking, and he mentioned, at that time I didn't have a core area. So I went to AREC, I didn't have a core area. I was just doing whatever I could, wherever I could.
Yeah.
But he mentioned to us how he started off in, like, I think it was a very, very small patch. I think they 500 properties or something, really tiny patch. Um, and it kind of go, okay, well, if there's one thing I could pick up in the whole of AREC, is that I think let's go back to the office and focus in or really concentrate in a one area, a small patch, and try and build up from there and go larger from that point onwards. I picked up that off Tom, and I literally copied him and came back to the office and decided, all right, this is going to be the area. I literally went back to my last sale. So some
Mm.
people go, I want to sell $6 million homes. I want to do waterfront,
Mm.
whatever it may be. I just went back to the last sale I made, and I went, okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'm just going to prospect the hell out, like the heck out of it around it,
Yeah.
and yeah, it started with the complex, and literally copied and pasted what Tom said, which is start off small, get to know people, and then the more you do that, you can then slowly expand. And that's what it was. But it was all
Mm.
within that one little pocket. I still
Yeah.
think that a lot of agents, the reason why they leave the industry is because they've never focused in on an area. They
Mm.
don't have the data in one particular area. Like they've got a database, but it's kind of all over, spread out.
Mm.
And they don't really have a long-term plan as to what they're going to do with it. So I was
Mm.
in a similar position until I went to AREC, and I would literally, yeah, listen to that one idea from Tom and put it into practice when I came back.
And I think sales, like if it's property or, recruitment's quite salesy as well, like it does have to be about the long game and long term. Like quick wins are good and they do keep you motivated and they keep you
Yeah,
going for the next, but it very much needs to be long game sort of thoughts with
yeah,
that. But, also, with real estate, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like it really is just as
yeah.
basic as focusing on an area, making
Mm,
phone calls, following up, just repeat the process. Real estate's not hard. Like it's not complicated. You just have to follow that process and follow it very well. I think when people come into the industry, they can overcomplicate, like you said, and spread
yeah,
themselves too thin and try
yeah,
and chase the big $6 million listing straight
yeah,
up. And it's just like there's just get the basics right. Get the
yeah.
basics right.
I think people think there's an easy way out there, but there really isn't.
Mm.
You got to do the
So,
work, and the work is quite simple. You got to connect with people,
yeah.
um, try and do it in a small kind of area if you can, and then pretty much once you connect with them, stay in touch with them. And when the time's right, if you do all the right things, eventually, when the time is right, like you can't force someone to sell, but when they do
Mm.
sell, if you've done everything right leading up to
Mm.
it, at least you will get an appraisal, and then it's up to you.
Yeah.
Then that's when the skill kind of takes over. But yeah, I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not hard. It's not skill related either. I literally
Mm.
think agents that do extremely well in the marketplace are just hungry, and they do the
Mm.
same thing over and over and over again. That's really it.
Yeah.
And you can't really teach that either. I think it has to come from within.
Mm.
We talk about um, how to improve our sales team, and it's always that. It's always like you got to find a reason why people actually turn up to work in the first place, and if the reason's good enough, they will go and they'll work. I think a lot of the issues are with people who are stuck in a role where they don't know where they're going, like they don't know what the 2 year or 5 year plan is. It's just
Mm.
like, yeah, look, I'm an assistant, I'll just wing it and
Mm.
figure it out when it's time to move on, what's going to happen. So it's important. I think every assistant uh, needs to have a goal in 12 months,
Mm.
24 months, what you're going to do, because you're not going to be an assistant for all your life. You
Mm.
eventually want to branch out on your own. So you need to have a clear vision of where you're heading.
Mm.
And I think if you have that, it keeps you motivated even when you're not getting the sales, because you're like, oh, hold on, it's all right. Like I'm going to, at some stage, going to aim towards being this or doing this. So you keep
Mm.
kind of pushing in that direction.
And I think too, like from a hiring perspective, we push this quite a lot with our clients that we're working with is they need to have a vision too and bring that to life for the person that they're looking to hire and show them the pathway and the steps to success that have been reached in the business already and where this role
Yeah.
could go. I've had a client I've been working with and they have had associates in their business, they're probably similar to you, that have gone down that pathway and become directors. And when you tell someone that's fresh to real estate that journey and what it looked like, they can tangibly see that there
Yeah.
is somewhere for me to go here. I'm not just going to be sat in a corner making calls for years and years and years because the agent doesn't want me to go stand alone and compete with them because I've got all their
That's the thing. Yeah.
contacts.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest problem in our industry. Like I work with a few agencies, and it's quite obvious. Like there are some where the opportunity to go and do your own thing is quite easy and it's achievable, but then there are
Mm,
some roles where you just can't do it. Like the director is
yeah.
not going to let you. list and sell in the same suburb that they're
Mm.
doing their own listing and selling, and it's just it's silly for the director. And
Mm.
as an assistant, you need to be aware of that. Like you need to know, okay, well, hold on, this is don't really have a future here. So you then have to
Mm.
make plans. I mean, it's good for experience.
Mm.
You need a director that's doing volume to kind of teach
Mm.
you and learn. But
Mm.
eventually, even if you're an associate, you do need your own patch. I strongly believe in that. I think you need to build your own database. You need to kind of go out there and get started in your own little space, because it takes a good couple of years before you kind of set in a new marketplace. So you need to do
Yeah.
that while you are an assistant, in my opinion.
Absolutely. So for you going from being the assistant to getting your own assistant, how is that shift? Like being responsible for someone and training and managing and they're calling in sick or they're running late or just like another load of responsibility as well as trying to bring in listings.
Yeah, I think it's quite simple. Like when I the reason why I hired someone is because, again, I knew what I wanted to achieve, like in terms of
Mm.
GCI, and I knew my goals, and I was like, it's impossible to do it on my own. So that recruitment process had to happen, and it was going to happen at some stage. I think I did it probably earlier than what I should have, but that's
Mm.
fine. Like it was better that way than doing it later. It's quite simple. Like, my job is still the same, and I made it very clear to the assistants that always work for me is that I don't really expect them to bring in leads or listings for me. I have to bring in the listings. I have to do all the hard work in that regard. What
Mm.
they had to do is just make my life easier. So whether it was, doing building in pests or speaking to people that weren't necessarily vendors or prospective vendors or buyers, their job is pretty much to make it easier for me to call the right people more often.
Mm.
And luckily, every single assistant I've had so far has been very, very good. All of
Mm.
them are still within the business, and two of them are now, so two of the oldest. So Jesse, who started off with me, first assistant, is now a standalone agent within my office. Regina, who was my second assistant, who's now a standalone agent as well within the office.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've got Lucas, who's in his first year in real estate, and then we've got Jason, who's just recently started with us. So yeah, look, I mean, it's good to know that people come on board and they stay within the business.
Absolutely, and that just goes back on what we said before. There was a pathway for them because I
Right.
think two of your associates have now gone into that standalone
Yep.
role, which is great for the business because then they expand their sales team. All that knowledge
Yep.
and everything's retained within the business as well.
Yep. Yeah. Now we're creating opportunities all the time. Like, um, if we find the right person, like for example, Jesse, we knew like the markets that we were in, he was doing Liberty Grove, which is a very, very small market,
Mm.
and there was a lack of turnover there. So it got to a stage where we go, hold on, you got all this data, you got all this market share, but there's only so many sales, right? And
Mm.
it almost became financially not viable just to have that one area as his focus area. So then we
Mm.
looked at other areas and where you could branch out. So now he's got a brand new core market that he's now trying to get in, doing well. Got a couple of listings already, so that's good. And along with that, same with Lucas, who started working for me about a year or so ago, has a marketplace that he's already targeting and doing extremely well in. He's getting a lot of data, and we've his first listing is going to come in any time now. So but he's done the hard work for almost a year. He's already
Yeah.
got listings, but not in his core area. So we're really trying to go. Okay, we'll take on the listings, obviously, for that short-term reward, but our main focus and the best listing is going to be the ones that are in his core market, because then that just allows him to double up or triple and get the momentum and expand from there.
And grow. Yeah. So obviously you've been that standalone agent with the business for quite some time. An opportunity came up recently for you to take that next step with your career. Talk me
Yeah,
through that. Where's
yeah.
it now in the Richard Matthews business?
Yeah, no, look, I mean, obviously, Richard and Matt and myself have a very good relationship. They're the ones that actually stopped me from moving on. So I'm very thankful for them to pull me aside and say, hey, look, like kind of just made me realize I was making the wrong decision.
Mm.
But we've always, like from pretty much day one, the support has been good. They've always been happy to help any day and any time that I need help. And yeah, it just made sense. Opportunity came around, and it made sense for me to be a part of the business as an owner, and we took it on, and yeah, now we have a new office out in the northwest part of Sydney, which is a hills district,
Yeah.
and that's going to just open us up to a huge market. And like I said, Jesse has already got a market there in Walkham Hills. We've got Lucas targeting a specific area as well in the hill. So it's all coming together, and it's a big opportunity. And I'm sure in
Mm.
the next kind of 2 years, 3 years, the plan here is to have many other agents with their own little marketplaces within the hills, and really dominating it, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, the opportunity came up, and there was no hesitation.
And has there been a shift for you with, I guess, responsibility or how you feel about the business now that you're in that sort of director and ownership space?
I think it's interesting because when you have your own team, you kind of already think almost like a director.
You're the director of
Obviously,
that. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you're kind of part of a bigger team now. I guess more
Mm.
responsibilities in the sense that we now want to have an even bigger team.
Mm.
Instead of two or three, we want to have plenty more.
Mm.
Um, I think the biggest change or mind shift now is it's not really just about listing and selling. Obviously, that's part of day to day stuff, but it's also about helping agents get into doors and get their first listings and watching them grow,
Mm.
because there's a very I guess there's a lot of satisfaction in that. When Lucas gets a listing, or when Jesse gets a listing, or Regina, even though she doesn't work directly in my office, if she gets a
Mm.
listing, it's good to know that they're succeeding and they're doing well. So yeah, as a director, obviously you have to also um, help that and progress the other guys that are working with you, which I'm happy to do, and it's part of the reason why um, I did
Yeah. And
director.
I guess like good leaders do that. They're happy for the people around them to be successful and to do well and to lift them up and to celebrate their wins and to pick them up when they fall. And your directors did that for you when you felt a bit lost and
Absolutely.
derailed. They recorrected you. They
Yeah.
continued to invest in you and reassure you, and now they've made you a director. And it's so nice to see that you've been able to mirror that leadership and build
Mhm.
up a team around you, because there aren't a lot of people that get that same opportunity. And it's such a compliment to the leadership in Richard Matthews that all of those people have stayed on and gone standalone. I think that
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah, I think a lot of the agents, like across our office, yeah, they all started with the same thing. Assistants that are now standalone agents. There's, people in the office now consistently writing anywhere between 600 to a million. Some
Yeah.
of them are doing it on their own. Like, there's my Lee in our office who literally writes $1 million on her own.
Yeah.
And, she has a very different way of working. So it's good because they've been able to get people into the industry. Like as another example, she wasn't even in real estate a few years ago, so she came into real estate and now doing $1 million in GCR. It's just mad, but it happened in a very short period of time. Again, focused on a very small specific area,
Mm.
and it's literally for the other agents now to copy and paste what we do. Like, I think we have a very good kind of process in place to make
Mm.
people successful, take them from an assistant role to a freestanding role,
Yeah.
and it's pretty much copy and paste it. Like, it's been done by myself, it's been done by other agents in the office,
Mm.
and more people are doing it as we speak. They're kind of building up their own little businesses within Richard Matthews, which is good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess when we're looking at the associates that have aspirations to become a director or a standalone agent with their own assistant, it's get a core area and focus on that. Start small and slowly build it out. So that's a key thing that I'm taking away from today.
Yeah,
Secondly, is to find that prospecting method that works for you. And
yeah,
three, collect the data and think about those long term relationships, not the quick little wins. Is there
yeah.
anything I've missed or anything else that you think is important for people to take away if they want to become a director or a successful standalone agent in the future?
I think the main thing is you need to have a pathway as well. Like,
Yes.
if you're working as an assistant right now, but you know that, hey, you're not going to be a standalone agent in the area that you're working in right now, you need to identify, okay, what else can you do to start setting yourself up for that success in a year or two down the track. That's big. I think having that pathway, a clear goal, Very, very important. And then, yeah, then that will allow you to kind of go out there and get the data because you know what you're trying to work towards or achieve.
Hmm.
So there's a little bit more motivation behind making that cold call or door knock. And then, yeah, I think just stay in touch, frequent communication, um, and build a team. Like, look to build a team because I think building a team will help you kind of expedite the process. Because you just focus on things that you're good at, and then you got to hire someone that you're not good at. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think coming up with an area that you can be a freestanding agent is very, very important, and then focusing in on that area and collecting the data, very crucial.
So we're going to see lots of your name all over the Hills District moving forward.
Hopefully.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. So let's see how we go. Not
Yeah,
just my name. Hopefully the Richard Matthews name. So with a few
absolutely.
agents on it.
It's all about the team. Yeah.
That's it. Get a few of us out there, and it'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for giving me some of your time
No problem.
today. It's always nice to catch up and have a chat and recap on your career journey. You've done so well, and hopefully, this inspires some people that are looking to build out their own sales careers.
Thank you so much. Good luck to everyone, and thank you for all your help as well.
No problem.
Thank
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Working in Real Estate webinar. Feel free to share your thoughts, questions, and suggestions with us. We would love to hear from you.